everyone. Welcome to Gee Whiz Weekends. I'm Emerald Fox.
I'm Lynette Zhang.
And we are going to be taking social media posts each week and diving into the topic and asking Lynette for her expertise on those topics and things we might not understand. She's going to be sharing her wealth of knowledge with us. So without further ado, let's dive right in.
Yep. And by the way, I have no idea what she's going to ask me, and I don't want to know. So go ahead.
All right.
What are we talking about
So the
today?
first social media post I have found here is from Financial Times, and it's talking about private equity owners piling on debt to pay themselves dividends. Now, my question is, why would private equity owners pile on debt to pay themselves dividends? That doesn't seem like, cheating the system to you.
Well, it is cheating the system, and there's lots of ways that they legalize manipulation and the cheating. But you see, when you have a private equity firm, it's not an individual's liability. So for them to take on debt to pay the dividends attracts other monies into this private equity. So it is indeed a Ponzi scheme. And it is indeed getting very, very dicey and very, very top heavy with debt. But what they're doing is they're pulling out the equity when you take a loan and, they pay themselves a dividend. We've seen this over and over again, where then they're pulling the equity out of that company. And then when they run into trouble, well, whoever loaned them that money that's who is paying that price. But in the meantime, so it very much is a Ponzi scheme, but it's a legalized Ponzi scheme. It's dangerous for everybody, not just the people that are investing their wealth into these private equity schemes, but also it has a much broader reach into the global economy because they've picked up a lot of the slack that the banks used to do before the great financial crisis in 2008, right? So they've picked up a lot of slack from that, but they're also tied into the banking system. So when they go down, that's going to have an impact on the banks too. It's just hidden because it's private equity, which means that they don't really have to divulge very much about anything.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, because so basically when a private equity fund is taking out that loan, it's because this big group isn't being profitable. They're not seeing enough profit on the company that they have their funds in. So they're not, they're just trying to appease their shareholders.
Not necessarily so, right? Because private equity can really have a number of companies in there.
Right.
So they've already kind of taken out the value. It's like in the 80s when we were first transitioning into this debt-based system and there were corporate raiders. Greed is good, right? In the 80s, that was the motto. And private equity would go into a company, dismantle it, sell off all these different pieces, right? And that's how they made their money. But that has kind of translated now into private equity, which used to be just for the very wealthy and was over here, and it was a small part of the economy. But again, since 2008, that has grown as the banks have left some of those areas they used to loan to. Private equity has stepped in. So it isn't just because the companies they've invested in aren't making money. It's a way to pull the money out, pull the equity, the profits out of a company.
Okay.
And just leave the debt holders in the crosshairs, in the lurch, and holding the bag, so to speak. I mean, we've seen it. Here's one. This wasn't private equity, but here's a great example of Boeing, right? How many times have they done these huge distributions, right? Borrowed to do these huge distributions, and then they ran into trouble, and we, the taxpayers, bailed them out, right? So incredibly, it is legal. It doesn't seem like it should be legal, but then again, you're not writing the laws. It's Wall Street that are writing the laws.
So over time, I mean, how does that, they're saying that the interest rates are low right now on this credit and that they're able to do these, big payouts because of these loans. But with what I'm hearing, interest rates are not moving, they're not coming down right now. So I don't understand how they're saying that and how they're using those, how they're even getting those loans.
Well, actually, the loans, when we had zero interest rate policy, or ZIRP, as they called it, zero interest rate policy, it was free money. And that was what inspired it at first. There's no longer free money. And so these loans that they're taking out are not at zero interest rates anymore. They're maybe at 5%, 7%, depending upon how risky, even 11% or more. So I'm not quite sure, that might have been an older article that you had pulled from, because no, that's part of the problem, is that these interest rates and the central banks are continuing to hold them up that high. And that is another problem with the debt and the zombie corporations, which are corporations. When you hear the term zombie corporations, those are corporations that for at least 3 years, have not been able to pay all the interest on their debt, let alone any of the principal. But the banks or these corporations, not wanting to show that loss on their books, have loaned these companies even more money to pay the interest so that they don't show the losses. And even though I can't quite prove this, my guess is that's also what's happening in private equity, right? That there are a lot of these companies that are in deep trouble. And as long as they can take in more money, that's what a Ponzi scheme does, right? Just keeps taking in more and more money. And when that money stops, that's when everything falls apart. And I think we're going to see that in not too long down the road. I think we're going to see that with private equity.
And that is when it becomes more of a public issue.
Correct.
And affecting the world economy at that point, because that's when we have to step in and bail them out again.
Exactly. But the taxpayer, there's only so much that a taxpayer can do, right? So between inflation and everything else that's going on, quite honestly, I think that we are, and all the debt that the individuals have these days, let alone the corporations and the governments, it looks to me like, I can't tell you the exact moment, but we are fast approaching that point of we're already past the point of no return, but the point of crisis. We're fast approaching the point of crisis where all of a sudden, seemingly out of nowhere, we will have the next financial crisis. And private equity could certainly trigger that. The treasury market could certainly, there's a whole bunch of different things that could trigger that. But private equity is certainly one of them. And it's grown substantially since 2008.
So that's it for GWiz Weekends today. A huge thank you to Lynette Zhang for sharing her expertise with me and with all of us together. Make sure to continue to follow along. Drop your questions here in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Remember to hit that bell. And if you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to email them to questions@LynetteZhang.com. I will be monitoring that and sharing those with Lynette as well.
Excellent.
And make sure to reach out to us. Together, we can definitely make a difference. And as always, please stay safe out there.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.